Good evening, and back in my office again. This broadcast is really concerns the Global Futures 2045 Forum. Again, as I mentioned, I'm a member of the forum, and I wanted to read a little bit from a letter we had recently written to Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General of the United Nations. And that's really in the wording of Dmitry Itskov, the founder of Global Futures. The world stands on the threshold of global changes. Ecological, political, anthropological, economic, and other crises are worsening. Wars take place, and of course wars create a lot of pollution as well. Not only a waste of resources, and a very brutal waste of resources, but a huge amount of pollution and destruction. The use of spent uranium, for example, gives us a pollution that will last 1,000 years. Anyway, resources are wasted thoughtlessly, and the planet is, of course, being polluted. Society is going through a crisis of the consumer model of existence, a crisis of goals and values. Most national leaders are concerned only with short-term internal stability of their own countries and pay insufficient attention to the problems of the future of civilization. Of course, politicians have to get elected or take over as dictators, and paying attention to their own internal stability is necessary. The problem is they do it at the expense of paying attention to the rest of the world and to the future of civilization itself. Humanity essentially faces this choice: slide into abyss of global degradation, or find and realize a new model of development, a model capable of changing human consciousness, giving new meaning to life. We believe that to move to a new stage of development, humanity vitally needs a scientific revolution and a significant spiritual awakening, spiritual changes, which will be inseparably linked, supporting and supplementing each other. The vector of development of the technology of the future should assist the evolution of the consciousness of humanity, the individual, society, and the transitions that we need to a new humanity. We're talking about spiritual revitalization in our world, because the consumerist model is spiritually degrading, and the indifference of so many toward the destruction of our ecosystem, of our biosphere, is also a sign of a spiritual catastrophe going on. The response of governments is always insufficient. The collapse of the economies in Cyprus and Greece largely stemmed from sheer dishonesty, from banking systems that are crooked and that violate both law and reason. And so these things arise when the spiritual values or the spiritual system is degraded. We have to realize that we're already in an age of computers. And this poses a lot of ethical problems. I remember this evening in the pre-sanctified liturgy where we sang when the Lord delivered the captivity, delivered from captivity, or delivered Zion from captivity, we were like those who dreamed. Well, sometimes we're also like those who dream or walking in our sleep about the condition and circumstances in the world around us. Thousands, tens of thousands of people have been displaced in their employment. by mechanization and particularly by robots. And we would estimate that for every 5,000 jobs lost by robots taking over these types of jobs, only 85 jobs are created in the manufacture and programming of the robots. However, they experiment now with robots building robots. So you don't need 85 people, you probably need 5 or 6. And this is mostly for programming and to supervise the machinery to make sure that if something goes wrong, it can be shut down and restarted. And also this age of artificial intelligence, where we are interfacing the human brain with computers and developing computers systems that are highly intelligent. And we're moving toward developing intelligent computers which can operate autonomously. And robots, human-like robots, that more and more can operate autonomously. In Japan, waiters in restaurants, some of the restaurants anyway, have replaced waiters with robots which serve the customers. They're talking about baristas being robotic. And this is something to think about because it's also part of the devaluation of the human person. But it's inevitable. No matter what ethical questions we have, they're the ethics of the inevitable. We can't turn it back, we can't stop it, there's nothing we're going to do about it. It's going to proceed. Many companies would like to replace high-priced humans with very low-priced robots. About, what, $26,000, $27,000. You can buy a robot that can work on an assembly line, and now they're getting to the point where if they're sorting bad from good, they pick up a product, hold it up to a sensor, the sensor tells them whether to put it in the bad or the good bin, and they do it. So we don't need humans for quality control. I notice that some packing houses now have robotic butchers on the assembly lines, cutting chicken. They remove the wings, they remove the legs, the thighs, and the breasts, and debone them, and there are no human beings involved at all. This displacement of human beings is quite a serious matter. Global Future 2045 is looking at the dramatic changes that are taking place, assessing how dramatic the changes will shortly be, and trying to create responses to that. It's going to happen. Are we going to guide it, or is it going to be piecemeal? And is everything going to be only for military use, or simply to displace human beings in factories? Of course, the question is, if human beings lose their jobs, who's going to buy the things purchased in the factories? We haven't come up with that one yet, but I'm sure we'll face that in the not-too-distant future. The most startling thing about Dmitry Itzkov's plan, his program, what I call the Itzkov concept, is, of course, human-like avatars. And the reason to look at this question is because it's going to happen. There are going to be, we've seen the robots in Japan, when you set them side by side with the person they're modeled on, it's impossible to tell the difference between the two. Even when the live human moves, the robot moves in exactly the same way. You blink your eyes, the robot blinks its eyes. Everything is run by the brain waves from the human to the robot. And these robots closely approach, in many ways, avatars already. So eventually you're going to have people creating avatars of themselves. Things that, and with the brain-computer interface, the avatar is going to think exactly like the human and become almost like a twin of that human. Now, we don't know where the boundaries of this are going to be. but to ignore the fact that it's developing would be foolish. And we're going to see this picking up speed, picking up steam. You know, there was a famous German rocket that was manufactured in the Second World War, and because the more oxygen it took in, the more it burned and the faster it would go. So they said that of this rocket, the faster it goes, because it took in more oxygen. Well, that's happening in these technological developments as well. The faster they go, the faster they go. And there are multitudes of uses for robots and avatars in mine rescue work, in doing very dangerous work, but this isn't what they're being developed for the most part. Robots, the biggest part of the development, aside from the military, is to replace human beings on assembly lines and in low-paid, mostly in low-paid jobs where you can get rid of people without too much protest. I wouldn't be surprised to walk into Walmart one day and find a robot greeter, or maybe one that's so far along that it looks like an avatar. But in any case, these things are coming. So one thing that Global Futures, and Dmitry Itzkov in particular, is interested in is not allowing these things to happen in a haphazard way that just suddenly explodes on human beings without any preparation or any thought, but to actually plan and develop these things according to some meaningful plan. They're going to be developed. Itzkov and the Global Futures want them developed in some meaningful way, some purposeful way. And this is what Global Future is really about. But the one thing we're definitely doing, you know, we use the word singularity. Now, singularity can mean a number of things. It's a sharp point of departure. If a black hole collapses into a singularity, the singularity is the end of the matter there, but something else is going to happen. Some kind of explosion is going to take place somewhere, perhaps at the other end, and explode outward into a different universe or whatever. We talk about this singularity, and it's really what we would call a major phase transition. Something really dramatic transitions in the unfolding of human history or the universe. The singularity that I'm discussing now is that singularity at which computers and robots excel over humans mentally, and also will do so physically. But the singularity is approaching at which computers and robots will outstrip and excel human mentality and human intelligence and the human capacity to resolve problems. That's a singularity, a point. It explodes somewhere. And this is something that we need to be thinking about, and something that Global Futures 2045 focuses on. Now, why 2045? Well, perhaps it's arbitrary, but it was picked as a singularity year. We would be approaching this singularity. Some of you will know that in Silicon Valley out in California they have the Singularity University, which is looking at these kinds of things and these perhaps major phase transitions. I picked that word up from Dr. Panov in Russia, the use of phase transitions in that particular way. Whether he coined it or not, I don't know, but Panov is one of the more brilliant scientists that I've met in my life. I read the papers that I've read of his, and I like that phase transition phrase. We'll talk about it a little later. At this point, though, I want to look at the idea of the singularity in the context of our Global Futures 2045 forum. And as I mentioned before, I'm trying to finish a short booklet called The Ethics of the Inevitable, in which I want to discuss the ethical questions from various perspectives of the development of avatars particularly, and respond to those ethical questions, all the while knowing that ethical questions or not, this is going to happen, it's going to unfold. And Itzkoff and others, the founders of Global Forum, want it to unfold in some kind of meaningful, planned, disciplined way, not simply totally haphazardly and without some kind of system, some kind of concept of values, some kind of concept of something spiritual, or preferably a kind of rejuvenation of a meaningful spiritual context for humanity. Because without that, we really are lost in our development, our evolution, our unfolding. So these things are all aspects of what Global Forum 2045 is concerned with. And I think it deserves support. And I think the idea of its founder, that these things should proceed in some kind of orderly, meaningful way, with a mind toward the spiritual, as well as simply mechanical, that all of the developments should not be first and foremost for war, which is the situation right now, but for other meaningful purposes. The idea that the development of robotics can free people who are crippled, can't walk, can't move their arms, people in wheelchairs, people with MS and ALS and all these other things. This is part of the whole picture in the development of robotics in a meaningful way. Simply displacing workers, robots so far, at least, won't be able to strike, won't be able to demand salaries at all, let alone higher salaries. And the people who can least afford to be pushed out of their jobs, the people in the lower echelons of jobs, these are the first people to be displaced in this robotic age that we're moving into. And that adds to the problem of poverty and the feeling among humanity that we have a disposable humanity, that our humanity is disposable. And this is a major catastrophe to think about. And again, Global Future is going to spend quite a bit of time thinking about these things, trying to project into the future to see what is unfolding and what is coming before us, to see what is best for the survival of human beings. And if we're going to have space exploration and space and colonizations in space, to what degree are robots and avatars suitable for going and founding and building those? What are the things that prevent human beings from doing it, at least at present? The radiation that would affect people, the coming to a place where you don't have the proper life support system and it has to be built, and then bring humans to an already created system of some kind. There are all sorts of things that need to be thought about. And these things are no longer science fiction, they're the inevitable. So I wanted to mention a few of these things and inform people a little bit more about what the Global Future 2045 Forum, the Congresses are really all about, and the one that will take place in New York City this year. You can Google Global Futures 2045 and find out details and information. But those who are really keenly interested in these subjects, in these things, could perhaps make arrangements to actually participate, to actually be present there. Now we will have a roundtable that's dedicated primarily to the spiritual. And we'll be having input from different spiritual traditions, and with questions and answers, and also to hear ethical questions that while none of these questions are going to turn back what's proceeding, at least we can explore the ethical boundaries or ethical limits that should be set, because sooner or later, not just individual governments, but some kind of United Nations convention is going to have to be established to deal with some of the issues that arise. from the developments of robotics, and ultimately from the development of avatar systems. So if you can, if you're able to, find out, go and Google the information, how to register, where to be at, all of these details, and try to plan, particularly if you're in the professions or trades or technological aspects or computer sciences, and see if we don't find this a very fascinating, very productive sort of discussion. So thank you all for joining us this evening, and God bless you all.